So in this video, I'm going to take you through all of the different properties of parabolas. So for the first question, it asks for us to write the domain, the range, and then the average slope over the given interval. So remember that domain is read from the left side of the graph to the right side of the graph. Let me make this graph a little bit smaller. My menu bar is covering that up at the bottom. So the left side of our graph is here. Now, remember that when you are reading the domain, we're specifically looking at the x values of the graph. So if our graph on the left side is here, the x value at that point is 0. To the right side of the graph, which is here, and the right side of our graph is at 4. So the domain is from 0 to 4. Now, it doesn't specify how to write this, so I'm going to write it in both inequality and interval notation. So from the left side, 0 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 4. So again, left side of the graph to right side of the graph. You have to make sure that whenever you write an interval, whether it's the domain, the range, or the increasing and decreasing intervals, your smallest value always goes first. In interval notation, we're going from 0 to 4. And because they're both equal to at those two values, that is why we use brackets, or when we use brackets. So that is our domain. For the range of the graph, the range is the very bottom of the graph to the very top of the graph. So the very bottom of the graph is this same point. Well, these are the y values now. So at this point, our y value is -7. To the very top of the graph, well, the top of our graph is not the other endpoint, so be really careful. The top of our graph is here. And the y value at this point is +2. So again, the smallest value to the largest value. For range, it's bottom of the graph to the top of the graph. So in inequality notation, -7 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to +2. And in interval notation, and here I should have put the x so that we know which one we're referring to. In interval notation, it's -7, +2. And again, they're both equal to at those values, so we use brackets. So that is our domain and range. Now for the increasing and for the average slope, let me erase this stuff so that I can mark up my graph with different color and it's not totally crazy. All right, so for the average slope over the interval, we're given the x values, 0 and 4. Now remember that those give us the x values of the two ordered pairs that we have to find the slope of or between. So where x equals 0, well, this is where x equals 0. So I go down to that point, and that's the point right here. And the coordinates of this point are 0, -7. To where x equals +4, +4 is here. Well, that's this point here. And the coordinates of that point are +4, +1. So if I were to draw a line between these 2 points, notice that my line is increasing as it goes to the right, which means that my slope should be a positive number. So when I take my values and I plug them into slope formula, I should get a positive value out of that. So we're going to use slope formula. Remember that is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to label my points. This is x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. And I'm going to take those and I'm going to plug those values into slope formula. So y2 minus y1. And always make sure you use parentheses, especially around those negative numbers, specifically around those negative numbers, to make sure that you don't lose your signs, over x2 minus x1. So 1 minus a negative 7, well, the two negatives become addition. So 1 plus 7 is 8, divided by 4 minus 0, which is 4. And 8 divided by 4 gives us 2. So the slope is 2. And again, we said it should be positive, so that matches up. All right, so for this graph here, the first thing we're asked to do is to identify the axis of symmetry. Remember, the axis of symmetry is the imaginary line that goes through our vertex. So here that is. It goes through the x-axis at 3, so that equation is x equals 3. Don't forget, for the axis of symmetry, you must always begin with x equals. Otherwise, a number on its own does not mean anything to us in the context of the coordinate plane. The vertex is the highest or lowest point on the parabola. Well, this one happens to be the highest point, and it is an ordered pair, so make sure you're writing it as so. And so the ordered pair of this vertex is 3, 5. We need to make sure that we're putting parentheses around our vertex, not brackets, and not just leaving it without. So please be really careful and make sure that for your vertex, for any ordered pair, that you're always putting parentheses around your numbers. Does the vertex represent a maximum or a minimum? Well, this is the highest point, which is the maximum value of the graph. The y-intercept, that's where our graph intersects the y-axis. That's this point right here. Again, it's a point on the graph, so we need to state it as an ordered pair. So the y-intercept is 0, negative 4. The x-intercepts, oh no, for this one, I chose a bad graph to show this, so I'm going to estimate here. But the x-intercepts are where the graph intersects the x-axis. So for this one here, I'm just going to say it's at 1. So this one here is 1, 0. And this one here, I'm going to say is 5, 0. Anytime you're given these questions on a test, those will be whole numbers if we're asking for you to identify them. So you'll never have to worry about estimating. The increasing interval. So if you take a look at our graph, we have to decide on which side of the axis of symmetry is it increasing or rising. So if you follow my pen, on this side of the axis of symmetry, it is increasing because it's moving in the upward direction as we go from left to right. So this is the interval where it's increasing. We read the increasing and decreasing intervals both from left to right. So the left side of our graph is going all the way to negative infinity. And as our graph moves to the right, it's increasing all the way again to the axis of symmetry, which is x equals 3. Make sure that you are always using the x value. We are not concerned about the fact that it goes all the way up to 5 for y, but we are concerned that it stops increasing where x equals 3. And that's the number we use in our interval. So the increasing interval is negative infinity, less than x, less than or equal to positive 3, or in interval notation, that's going to be parentheses, negative infinity, 3, with a bracket, because we cannot equal infinity, but we do equal at 3. So our graph is equal to x equals 3. There is not a hole there. Therefore, on the other side, our graph begins to decrease. So on the right side of the axis of symmetry, that's where our graph is decreasing. So the decreasing interval is from the axis of symmetry. That's where it begins to decrease. But we're reading it from the left side to the right side. So it begins to decrease at 3, and then it goes all the way to the right. And the numbers to the right are positive infinity. So it's decreasing from 3 less than or equal to x less than positive infinity, or in interval notation, that's going to be a bracket at 3, comma, positive infinity with a closed parentheses. Again, we cannot equal infinity, so we don't use brackets there, and we don't say equal to in our inequality notation.